NFIP or better flood insurance? Hi, let's talk about which is better. I am a huge flood nerd. I love flood insurance. My name is Robert and I am the flood nerd. I am here to help you get through the complicated insurance called flood insurance. The reason why is there are few agents that truly understand what is going on in flood insurance. As a flood nerd, we have some idea of which policies we like better. And oftentimes the NFIP or government option is much more expensive than the private flood insurance market. One thing to consider is that the NFIP has had a monopoly for almost 50 years on the flood insurance market in America. Today I want to talk about the difference between the NFIP and the private market. Let's start with the government program. Since they've had this monopoly, they have set up the standard of the maximum building coverage that you can get, which is $250,000 for your structure, and then $100,000 for contents. That would be good if houses were only $250,000 to rebuild. Many of our private flood options will allow us to go ahead and go to replacement cost, meaning that we would create the policy to go beyond the $250,000 that is the minimum or maximum amount offered through the NFIP. The private flood market offer options for us to go up to $2.5 million. The private market has this coverage which is called loss of use, which allows you to get reimbursed for the costs of hotel stay or food that you would need during the time that you've been displaced from your home during an active flood. The NFIP don't got that. The NFIP only offers coverage on other structures if that other structure is solely used as a detached garage, so there's no living area above it. Some of the private policies that we have allow us to get coverage on other structures regardless of it being used as a shop or a second home or an apartment above. You need to ask us about this coverage if you're truly interested in it. One key difference between most of the private flood policies that we offer and the NFIP policy is the contents coverage. Some of our private flood policies, and the ones that we try to get for most of our clients if we can, is going to pay out on replacement costs. So that means that if your furniture was damaged, that what it would cost to replace it, you would get a check to reimburse you for the replacement of that furniture. On the NFIP policy, the only option that you get on contents is actual cash value, which means that they're going to use a complicated math scheme to do depreciation on your furniture, and then you would get a payment that's depreciated. Another key difference between the NFIP and the private market is the wait time. Some are as little as 10 days, some will be in 15 days. The NFIP, however, or the government option, is a full 30 days, a full month. So you really have to plan if you're going to be working with the NFIP policy. Now, any property that you're purchasing in a new home, we can use that to trigger the policy to be effective immediately. A very interesting fact, considering that the NFIP has been around for 50 years, actually a little bit longer, but they've had a monopoly for 50 years, is that they are not compliant with a lot of state laws. The private market, however, does tend to be more rigorous and compliant with all the state laws. One thing about the NFIP or the government option is that they are so far in debt that they have to borrow against the Treasury and the taxpayers have to bail them out. The private market is not using taxpayer money to be able to bail out, and they have a huge surplus for the most part. At the time of recording this video, the NFIP or FEMA has the lion's share, almost 90% of all the flood policies within the United States. The private market has been growing since 2012, and during that time we did a lot of education for lenders. So at this time, all lenders, due to federal law, have to accept the private flood insurance as your record for having flood coverage. The federal government does not recognize the private flood policy for the FHA loan, so the only option that these homeowners can get is the government option, which is really sad because the difference is on the private market quite often. It's around $500 for the flood policy for an annual flood policy, and with the NFIP it could be $2,500. It is so unfair. Some of the downsides to the private market is, and we don't really see them as a downside, is that the deductibles are typically set at $5,000 or more. The NFIP, you can get smaller deductibles, but in our belief, when you're dealing with a catastrophic claim, which means a claim that's gonna be hitting many properties at once, you don't want to turn in small claims. And the challenge with turning in small claims is every time a claim is turned in, it goes against the record of the property, and it could put the property on a severe repetitive loss list, which is not a good thing. A few people are confused because they think they have a private flood policy because it's written by State Farm, Farmers, Progressive, Geico. These are not private flood policies. They are the NFIP or the government policy, but they're disguised by the Geico logo. And these are not the private flood policies that we're talking about. These are private companies, but they're just reselling the NFIP policy. So you probably are not getting the best rate unless you shop it. So let us shop it. Have a fantastic rest of your day.